Today I'm bringing this topic, very fascinating topic, about the Whitexicans. So I'm not talking too much about migration today, but I'm bringing you to the Mexican context and this example of what Whitexicans narratives are in the post-digital field of action. And of course, in terms of this conference, I will bring some issues on some links with Europeanness, or this idea of Europe. So yes, as it was mentioned, I have recently been appointed at this topic and with these new projects in Chemnitz, and so I must warn you that these are the beginnings of what I hope are or to have the results in some years. Here are really the beginnings of this new topic focused on digital cultures or post-digital cultures. So just to put you a bit on the context. So today I will very briefly go through the theoretical lens and the methodology, because I really want to focus on the examples, and to explain you, and well, maybe you know already a bit, but also I'm very interested in this dialogue and this sharing ideas and of your questions. So Luisa already mentioned a bit of the Postdigital. So, and of course, if you have visiting the conference, you know a lot about the Postdigital. But just as a quick reminder, it is this entanglement, this embeddedness of these what I call fields of action. I will go on that point in the next slide. But it is about this fuzziness. We need to really contemplate that there's still absences. There's digital divide. There's power struggles. There's inequality, and the field of action of the virtual and the online and the offline might be relevant to observe, but still there is a continuity, there is some embeddedness there. So the dichotomies are obsolete, but that doesn't mean that we cannot see some examples of the online and the offline. So this is something that of course we can discuss, but I want to bring this issue also. Yes, so by fields of action, so the post-digital field of action is, of course, or needs to be understood in plural. There are many fields of action, and of course here I'm using field as ReDICo uses as a setting of interaction where struggle takes place, but also enables human and non-human actors to interact in different ways, in different forms, in different levels. And these interactions on a network perspective are reciprocal, also in different stages, but there is a union between all these fields of action. Of course, humans might participate more in one or more, in multiple fields of action, but in different levels at different moments. And of course, I'm using this field of action also in the sense of how Jürgen Bolten approached culture and interculturality as a structured processual approach, where there are these nodes where more structure, more routines, more culture, more knowledge that is known, that is taken as evident, as self-evident, as normal, and also this processual approach of relations, of opportunities of change and the creation of new or certainty and uncertainty. Mileni also explained it yesterday in her talk. So here, of course, I approach this with the perspective of the imaginaries as this knowledge, this shared knowledge, this common sense knowledge that I find is very relevant in shaping that what we think and that what we perceive and that what we do. At the end, these interactions are through practices, and these practices are also pretty much influenced by the social imaginary. And as social imaginaries are perspectives that take the relevant part of the subjectivity, of that role of the imagination, of the ideas, and this perspective that believes that also science needs to take a deep look into this, because not everything is objectable, and this subjective and imaginary part takes a pretty much important role in how we approach reality, or how we create reality, how we construct reality in that what we think, that what we do, and the interactions in the different fields of actions in there we interact. And here, of course, is also perspective from sociology of knowledge with Berger and Luckmann, but also I take these these thoughts also of Jürgen Bolten, and I try to put it all together with the imaginaries in my PhD research. So quoting Cornelius Castoriadis, very important person in the imaginaries theoretical approach. He speaks about the magma of imaginary social significances as a flow that has a very important role in this flow of imaginary perspectives that will eventually become harder, that will eventually be, if we put it in terms of Bolten, will create a culture. And I will call that as a dominant imaginary, but also imaginaries are there for question dominant realities, and that would be an emergent imaginary that at the end will become fluid again. And it will flow, and that is this ongoing dynamic between dominant imaginaries, emergent imaginaries, culture, and interculturality, or in words of Cornelius Castoriadis, the social imaginary, the radical imaginary. So, bringing back the attention to Mexico and mixing it already with the first presentation a little bit of this is the history of colonialism in Latin America, and this paint that I saw for the first time, I think in fourth class in primary school, where we learned how what was the impact of Spanish colonization in Latin America, but this is specifically of the New Spain, that what we know now as Mexico. And there we learned that there are different, or there were different caste systems, different combinations depending who was related with whom and had children, for instance. No? So we had the criollos. I'm not sure the Spanish how the Spanish word will turn into English of Creole. I think it's a different definition there. But the criollos were the Spaniards that were already born in America, and if they will have a baby with an indigenous woman, that would be the mestizos. And so there are narratives of Mexico that see now the majority of the population as mestizos, and that we have many other combinations that are of course quite critical to see and very racist. And what I find here very interesting is how this racist system, in terms of Aníbal Quijano, seen as the coloniality of power, how coloniality very pretty much related into post-colonialism, but from this Latin American perspective, the coloniality of power as a system that has created this racist differentiation and this different classification of people into social classes, but also pretty much entangled with racism. So I'm calling that a dominant imaginary of coloniality that I also discussed in the paper of Yalitza Aparicio, to make a little bit of a commercial to the ReDICo journal. And I see this dominant imaginary of coloniality as a dominant imaginary in Mexico, and how it's still current. So maybe this caste system is not current as such, but we still have these differentiations of society in terms of phenotype, social classification. There's a normalization of racism in everyday life. We listen to that in language, and there's stereotypes. No, if somebody says, don't go so much under the sun because you will become too prieta. No, prieta is a word that says it's very, very dark. So we see now in the social media as this skinometer, these memes that were using these different colors to again to relate this classification, and I see a very clear combination with this representation of the caste system and this palette of colors. So we see that the skin colors are arbitrary, are of course very causing a lot of prejudices, because if you are in the same in some sort of palette of colors, then your practicals and your activities would be different, would be perceived different as if it's more dark. So there has been a very important study in 2019 where these issues were discussed with numbers, and there, I won't go in detail, but then there was also, from an intersectional perspective, how people who tend to be more lighter have more access to work, to to places of better conditions of life, and how darker skinned people have less scholarity and have, for instance, no access to position of power, for instance, or taking power leading positions and work. So we see there very interesting links, how still this coloniality of power, this dominant coloniality of power, still present in everyday life in the current times. And there are other movements, for instance, this Poder Prieto, also very active online, that says like a strategic embracement of this darkness, and also using this skinometer as this palette to say, Prietos chingones, this is like, we are great, no? So there is these also narratives that trying to take these colors from another positioning. So coming back to the main topic, the Whitexicans. Who are the Whitexicans? Whitexicans is a term that combines the words white Mexicans, Whitexicans in English, but it's not only in terms of phenotype. There is a connection, because we see who is in the elite and who is in the major poorer and with less opportunities in this social classification. But here is also in terms of this belonging to some privileged classes, but also the attitudes, the practices, and the banal conflicts that are related to a privileged lifestyle. So it is very fascinating because this term Whitexicans started, for what I could research, approximately in 2018 on Twitter. So there are Twitter accounts that started using this term Whitexicans, and this has evolved, and there's an impact now of this word also in the offline world. So here we see the continuity, the impact of how something created online has an impact also offline, but of course it comes from the offline. If we are, of course, I'm dividing it here just for terms of explanation, how this comes from the colony, and how it's also being portrayed on social media. So just a couple of examples, how these practices are being visualized in the online realm. For instance, here, Juanjo, the Whitexican, supports Black Lives Matter, but he discriminates the Mexican who is darker skinned, or how these Whitexicans go and take pictures or take selfies with indigenous people, but then discriminate, for instance, the cleaning staff. So, okay. Here, just to show some relations with Whitexicans and these bonds to Europe, but also there's a mixture with USA and these relations to the global north, as to see, for instance, the first one, he's light skin with green or blue, I don't know which color the eyes are, but she's showing that he's Mexican, but always in Mexico, people think that he's foreign. But also here is important that when these people go abroad, they are very proud to be Mexicans. So they come again to these traditional narratives of being Mexican, the traditional forms, very proud of the indigenous heritage. But then inside Mexico, there's these discriminatory practices, and how they post how, for instance, it's a challenge to be white in Mexico. And here, for instance, how this guy, he's a coach, how cannot be more as a European who has a cleaner image and is more successful in sports, or the other one visiting his ancestor Maximilian from Maximiliano de Habsburgo, who was yeah, okay, I don't go in detail, but there's these links of this visualizing the European links, or wishing to be more as Europe or as a European, because there's this differentiation of Europe is better than Mexico, so in very general terms now because of the lack of time, but outside Mexico we go again to the narrative of how proud we are to be Mexican, no? Or the last one, he's crying because she's living in her favorite continent. So also in terms of languages, we see that this how we catalog practices in terms of who is doing that. And just the last example, Cholos, or the Chicano community in the United States, for instance, Mexicans with living in the United States, speaking Spanglish, for instance, would be seen as a low class, critical aspect of mixing languages. But if the so-called Whitexicans show that maybe they're speaking many other languages, for instance, this woman explains how is her everyday life with the father speaking in French and the mother in Spanish, but then she's moving in many other languages, then she will get a lot of criticism and a lot of comments of hate because she's showing off, and the comments would be also very critical in terms of you wish to be European or American. So there's a lot of complexity there, because on the one hand there is criticism, there is cyber harassment, these accounts will post these practices, and then people will go and make a lot of comments, that then these accounts will be shut just to protect themselves. So for further thinking, there's a lot of questions, and I see this example of the Whitexicans and these post-digital practices, of course, in terms of how we imagine and reimagine and redefine Europe, the Europeanness, but also Mexicanness, and of course, these terms of the imaginaries, which I didn't discuss here, maybe another time. Thank you very much.